cobras, we're going to come down. We're going to be on the abdomen probably for the majority of this. And I can withstand that pretty comfortably. So I'll probably just keep that up unless at some point I need a break. If you feel like you need a break from being on your abdomen, you should take one without waiting for an invitation. But we're going to come on down, and I put a blanket, from like shoulders to thighs here, just to make sure that ribs and hips are comfortable. We're going to start by stacking the hands and resting the forehead down. And then walk your legs back once or twice. So it's just like the feet, they kind of push into the floor. You lift and lower the knees as you pull the femurs back. And once you feel like you've gotten some length out of the front of the hips in doing this, you can come back down to the floor with either the tops of the feet, but if that gets tiresome for you or begins to feel like a little crampy, you could, of course, spend some time with your toes turned under. Let's take 3 long breaths here. So you really get a sense of your relationship to breathing as you are face down. There's an inherent little struggle and stress in the best possible way, best possible interpretation of those words. In order to move the breath around, you got to move other ribs, you got to move other muscles. Maybe just one more of those longer inhales and exhales. And then from this, you can pick up your head and hands and arms, and we're going to do a side bend. So I'd like you to turn your upper body towards the right. So I've shifted my shoulders over, I've brought my head and my upper back, and then I'm going to return back down to the floor, or excuse me, back down to the backs of my hands with my forehead. And then in the side bend, I'd like you to figure out a few inhales and exhales. We'll stay for a moment. So if you're here and you feel like, oh, I could come in deeper, I'd follow that internal urging if it's helpful. You could also take that left hand out from underneath your forehead and then reach across like on a diagonal into the right corner of your space, amplifying the sensation perhaps of length from hip to waist to ribs to armpit, through shoulder, all the way through the arm on that left side. And then if you have reached that left arm out here, let's call that back in, slide to center, and then of course we'll head over towards the left. So as you come along, you're going to move your upper body, forehead then comes back down to those hands. If having head on hands is not comfortable, you could slip a corner of blanket between your forehead and the floor and use that instead. And again, it might be of interest to you to then send that right arm out, to let it reach further along on this sort of curved diagonal stretch. And to think here about getting some of those breaths back in. And then if you stretch that right arm out, here's the moment to call it back in, and we'll get back into center. And then as you're here for the moment, instead of stacking your hands for your forehead, I'd like you to slide your hands so that you bring the heels of the hands to the floor, close towards your sides, and then as far back as is logistically possible for your wrists. So if you're limited in your wrist extension, it's not easy to like park the heels of the hands next to your lowest rib. You might have to be up a little bit. All that being said, what I want you to find is that as your palms are on the floor, you've slid them as far back, as far down your torso as you can, without it being too much of a tax on those wrists. Don't shirk the stretch that might come with that, but a lot of us just don't have that much extension, so we shouldn't fake it, right? So as you're here, you can still push the heels of your hands down into the floor, and as you have that pressure of the heels of the hands down, disperse it. Can you also press the knuckles of the fingers, all the knuckles on all the fingers, those two thumbs. And as you plant your hands down, from here, keeping your forehead on the floor, and I'm just going to tuck my chin a little bit. So instead of being like directly on the bridge of my nose, I'm more towards my hairline, and I recommend that. So as you have your forehead down, hands pressing down, lift the fronts of your shoulders from the floor. So you just put another 1/2 inch of space between the front of your shoulder and your yoga mat. Ugh. So that means the middle of your back and between your shoulder blades now have to hold those shoulder blades in position. So push your hands down, lift those shoulder fronts up, bring the elbows closer together, and then as much as you can, even if it's like invisible and not really happening, I want you to push your shoulder blades apart. And then from here, we're going to come up with the forehead. So this is the world's lowest cobra. That's my little nickname for this one. You're going to pluck your forehead off of the floor, press those hands down, and the amount that you lift up is achieved really just by your back strength. Your hands are not really able to leverage your lift here. And instead of then using the muscles at the back of the neck, which are already overused, to lift the chin, we're going to keep the chin tucked and kind of just stare blurrily down right to the floor. Press the hands. You might not lift up any higher because of that, but could you correct your shoulders? Could you lift again those shoulders away from the floor? Come up any amount higher, and then with an inhale, exhale, let's come all the way on down. And if it feels right, you could stack your hands for your forehead, or you could turn one cheek or ear to the floor. All right, let's go round 2, world's lowest cobra. So forehead down and then tuck your chin so you're more on your hairline than your the bridge of your nose. Heels of the hands slide back. Thumbs are close towards the body, and then elbows come in close. And then again, the first thing that you lift, like really the most important thing that you lift here, is going to be the fronts of those shoulders away from the floor. And then pushing the hands down, we'll lift off the forehead, the nose, the chin, the throat, the collarbones away from the floor. Here's round 2, world's lowest cobra. You push your hands, but it doesn't lift your chest up any higher. You push your hands and you peel your shoulders back. Now that might lift your chest higher. And as you're here, again, temptation might be to look forward, to look up, and no need. We'll breathe in. And then let's exhale, come all the way back and down. Here's a brief pause, a brief rest. We'll do round 3 of the world's lowest cobra in just a beat or 2. All right, let's slide those hands back. That poor upper back. So underloved these days. So much screen time, sedentary time, that upper back really does take a toll. So as you're here and you press the heels of your hands down and you lift your shoulders, that's sort of like just trying to jiggle the key within the lock to get that upper back to do a little bit of motion, movement, engagement, and then push the hands down. You lift the shoulders, push the hands down, lift your forehead, nose, chin, throat, collarbones away from the floor. And as you're here, not looking up, can you keep your thighs down by pushing your knees to the floor? Knees to the floor, and come up any amount higher, throwing those shoulders back without looking up, without lifting the chin. All right, and then let's from here, press into those hands a little bit more as you slide them forward, some amount. It's a little bit different for each person's proportions. And as you push into those hands and they've slid forward, now begin to lift up because your hands are more helpfully placed for raising your chest from the floor. So here, as you come into a more uplifted cobra, I'm absolutely 100% using my hands and their push to raise my chest off the ground. Okay, we're gonna come down, but I want you to imagine here that it's your forehead, your hairline that touches first, and those lowest ribs on your front body touch last. So it's sort of like you do like a nosedive, boom, forehead, boom, ribs. Let's do that again. We're going to take an inhale, exhale, play with the position of your hands. Lift the shoulders back away from the floor, elbows close. And then as you lift forehead, nose, chin, throat, once you get that first bit of your spine, the head end of it lifted, then apply the hand pressure. Use that to curve your spine off the floor. And as you come into this, I wouldn't find the position, I'm doing it on screen right now if you need to see it, where you just lock out your arms, because it tends to just put the head forward. You can see how terrible my posture looks here. And I'm just sort of like crushing the little wrist bones on the floor. I mean, it doesn't feel bad, but it's not a muscular position. So as you're here, can you bend your elbows? And as you lift on up, really recruit your upper back. Okay, we're gonna come down again. And again, try to land your hairline at the top of your forehead before your ribs. And you can watch if you need to see it. Here's my forehead touching down, boom. Here are my ribs touching down, second. Okay, let's take a breath. Sorry, I'm on the verge of sneezing. Give me a sec. It's that tree pollen. All right, I think I'm in the clear. We're gonna push the hands down, lift the shoulders away from the floor, elbows close. Find that those bottom tips of the shoulder blades get pulled down to the middle of the back. And as you push your hands into the floor, use that to secure your shoulders. Then forehead, nose, chin, throat, collarbones, chest off of the floor. Then recruit that arm strength, push down, peel up into your taller, more verticalized cobra. And again, instead of hanging out on straight elbows, which is less muscular, it's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just not the way your back's going to get stronger. From here, elbows bend, shoulders pull back, chest raises. We'll take an inhale and exhale. Right, as you're here, can you push sufficiently into your hands to lift your hips? Let's stretch on back to a child's pose, because it's been a while of being on the floor, face down, and we have a little bit more to do. So a little change of scenery for the lower body. If you need something of a more drastic change, what about a downward dog or anything else that comes to mind? And just take a couple of breaths. We'll be back at it in just a second. If you're in child's pose like I am, reach your arms forward so they're straight, and energize those arms by, like, every once in a while, just crawl them forward. Then once you've reached out as far forward as you can you keep your forearms on the floor, but flip your hands off the floor? So the fingertips point straight up towards the ceiling. Your palms are facing forward. All right, and then palms come on down. Right, if you've been anywhere other than child's pose, you might shimmy your way towards a child's pose. We'll come up to an all fours, and then we're gonna lower on down one more time. Okay, so this next set of cobras, I would like you to reach your arms just straight ahead out in front of you. And keep your head up for the moment. And just give yourself a couple of breaths where your shoulders are basically, they're in a passive shoulder flexion. It might not feel like nothing, right? So passive doesn't mean sensationless. It can be very sensationful. So while you're here with your arms forward, it's not that your arms are striving to come into this flexion. They're just put there because of the position. They're outstretched along the floor. And give yourself a few breaths. And again, can you keep your face off of the floor? That means you're doing a wee little back bend in the upper back and in the base of the neck. You don't have to then look way up or way forward. You might even tilt your nose towards the floor, but your face is off the floor. All right, and then let's go on a bit of a side bend. So I'm going to take my right arm first, left arm second. And again, I'm not looking up to the ceiling and straining my throat, but I don't have my face on the floor. I'm a little bit lifted. All right, and then shimmy through center, and then left arm to the left, right arm to the left. Oh. And again, can you come up a little bit with your chest? All right, and then arms come forward, arms come forward. All right, and then as you're here, keeping yourself up a little bit, can you work to raise the chest off of the floor? It's, not being able to have my eyes directly on you. I'm going to ask you to put your eyes on me so I can show you what I'm thinking of. So I want to be a little bit more right here instead of doing this next maneuver, which is to look forward and see my thumbs. And it's fine, right? Like my neck can take it. It's not like automatically bad news. But what I want to find instead is that I'm not measuring the pose by like what I can see, which is like over to that window wall, but like if I can lift a rib or two off of the mat. So as you're here, try to come up a little bit higher, but not because you looked up or you raised your eyebrows or you threw your chin forward. So I'm actually going to look right at the front edge of my yoga mat. So it's a little bit forward, but it's down on the floor. And I'm going to try to lift a little bit more of my chest off of the ground. Okay, here's the deal. If you are at all leaning into your hands, you're about to lose that little advantage. Can you raise your right arm and then release it down? Can you raise your left arm and then release it down? And then can you raise the both and then take that down? And then can you do that 4 more times? Both arms up, 1 and down. Both arms up, 2 and down. Now pause here, raise your chest a little higher. Again, you don't have to look up. Raise both arms, there's 3 and back down and raise the both arms. Oh, there's 4 and we're gonna hold it. You know we would. Arms are straight. You don't have to look up. You might even look down. Oh, but try to lift 1 more rib off the floor. Hard to do when I'm talking. There I go. All right, and then let's take a pause. Let's take a rest. And it could be stacking the hands for the forehead, turning the head to one side or the other, or just even coming up with something else altogether different. All right, let's once more slide the hands so they're in a position when you press into them, you can assist your spine in lifting off the floor. So that's, pardon me, a little bit different for everyone's body, and it's somewhat strength, it's somewhat flexibility, but it's also proportions. So as you have this, you don't want to have your hands forward, right? Because isn't that going to make you shrug your shoulders up? They're far enough back to feel like, okay, leverage, I've got something to push into. But at the same time, you can still correct your shoulders. So if you feel like the heads of your shoulders, again, you could put your eyes on the screen for a second. See how the head of my shoulder is like a couple inches away from the floor. What I'm looking for is to lift it back, right? So look how much movement that is. And that is my shoulder blade shrugging and then coming down, shrugging and then coming down. So as you have this, shoulder blades into the middle of your back forever and always. All right, so press the hands, lift the shoulders, press the hands, lift your face, your throat, your chest from the floor, and then come up any amount higher where you're still pushing your hands, not leaning into them. They're not crutches. They're spring loaded, and you want to use this to take your back bend. All right, when you come on down, it's forehead first, ribs second. Forehead first, boom, ribs second, boom. All right, let's do 2 more. So press your hands to lift your shoulders. Press your hands to lift your head. Keep pressing your hands. Raise your chest, bhujangasana. What makes it Cobra Pose? Your pelvis is on the floor. So if you're here, that's sort of like a nada pose. It's like a mishmash of a cobra and an up dog. So as you're in cobra, your pelvis is on the ground, in case you needed that distinction, because there's another pose that sort of lurks nearby and somewhat similar. All right, forehead first, rib second. Take a breath. We'll do 1 more in this part of the sequence. So hands press to lift your shoulders. Hands press, lift your forehead, nose, chin, throat, collarbones, top, chest, and then keep on going. All right, coming down, it's forehead first, and then your ribs. All right, so let's find, just out of reach, a block. And as you have your single block, you can reach forward again with the block between your hands. And once more, I don't have my forehead on the floor at the start of this. Like if I need to get there, I can just duck down and be in that position for a moment. But I'm going to start with my head off the floor because that's actually the easiest part of the pose. So we might as well just throw it in there straight out of the gate. And again, I'm not lifting my chin to see the block. In fact, I'm going to instruct you guys to tuck your chin. Like you're trying to actually see the collar of your shirt. And as you have this, could you still lift your head and your chest off of the floor by any amount. And at what point do you get befuddled by that and then just look forward, right? So you can go up, and that's what we're looking for instead of looking ahead. And as you're here, you're going to squeeze your block, press in dynamically. And that's just going to be the first thing, right? That's where we're going to stay for a moment, is pressing the block. Can you roll your inner elbows to face upwards? And then press your knees against the floor. Knees against the floor. Could you pick up one more rib off of the mat? And then without looking forward, can you say to your neck, this really isn't your job? And can your neck heed that instruction? And then as you keep your eyes down, nose down, but face away from the floor, let's raise that block. And as high as you can, even if it's like not even off the floor. And then we'll lower it back down. You can take a pause, and if that includes putting your head down, have at it. I know I'm going to. You've got 2 more of those. The block seems heavy. It's not the block. So you could switch this out and have in between your hands like that half foam roller. That's fine. You could hold a feather between the hands. That's fine. It's not the block. So if you're doing this and you're like, oh, I wish I had a foam block or something lighter, don't let your desires to make this easier begin to assign blame to things that are not worthy of your blame. So you're going to have the arms forward, squeeze your hands on the sides of the block, and lift your forehead, nose, chin, and throat off of the floor without tipping your face to look forward. This is retraining around your neck and shoulders. This is a generalization, but I haven't been wrong yet, at least lately. You overuse some muscles at the base of your skull, the suboccipitals. You overuse the shoulder blade muscles that lift the shoulder blades up. You create a traffic jam in the back of your neck. And then we wonder why like our shoulders and our middle back really struggle. Well, it's because other things took charge. As you're here squeezing the block, yes, still forever more, inner elbows face up, press your knees down, and then lift one more bit of chest off of the floor. Like pick yourself up a little bit more. All right, so you're a little bit higher. And again, you're still gonna look down here. And then let's raise that block. Bring it down. We'll take a pause. We'll give it a few inhales and exhales. That was about 5 breaths. I don't know how quickly you were breathing, but I was counting it off mine. And we're gonna do that one more time. Okay, you know the setup. Squeeze your block, pluck your face off the floor. No need to look forward. You're already lifting your chin relative to your neck most of the time. So let's tuck the chin. And then try to pick up a little bit more of your chest off of the floor and push your thighs to the ground. Squeeze the block. Here we go. Take one more breath in. Raise it on an exhale. Down I go. All right, let's go ahead and take that pause. Either stack your hands, turn a cheek to the floor, child's pose, downward dog. I don't know what would feel right. Go for that. We got one more real evil thing to do here. So set your block aside. And actually, I'm going to go into child's pose for a second. That was a lot of pressure on my ribs, not painful, not injurious, just kind of a long time in one position. So I'm sort of in a dog slash child's pose, little puppy stretch. So you might like something similar. This is just a brief interlude before we head back to our final round of cobras, bhujangasana. All right, friends, let's go ahead and come on back down. This time you will need a strap. And I've just folded mine in half. So it's we're not gonna loop it, but you won't need its full length. And what you're gonna do is come on down and hold it. How do we do this? Yeah, we're gonna hold it with an overhand grip. How to think it out for a second. And as you hold it, you can take it wider than shoulders width distance. So a little bit wider than the width of your shoulders. And you will edit this as you go along, probably without even like thinking of it consciously. You would probably just shift your grip around. You're going to raise your chest, look down, but keep your chest off the floor. We're going to take the strap off the floor and you're going to pull it back as though you're taking it overhead. Elbows are lifted. This is the tricky bit. You could watch if you need to. And then from here, you're going to stretch your arms back, palms end up facing up. All right, so then we reverse it. Elbows to a bend, elbows lifted, right? So I'm not here, elbows are high, and then I reach it back overhead. Got to clear my ponytail. So reaching forward, lift it up, pull it back so it's over your shoulder blades, lift your elbows off the floor, and then flip your arms out straight behind you. So now the strap is kind of over my backside. All right, elbows to a bend, reaching back up overhead. All right, pull down, flip it over, flip it back, reach overhead. Couple more, pull down, elbows are high, flip it over, belt is over your butt or thereabouts, flip it back, belt is over your shoulders, and then reach back overhead. Pull down, flip, flip, reach up. Pull down, flip, flip, reach up. Two more, pull down, flip, flip back, reach overhead, oop, ponytail, pull down, and then flip. Stay here, palms are facing up, take your arms off the floor, raise your chest, tilt your nose towards the floor. Remember, you don't have to look up here. Flip back, so elbows are lifted, hands are lifted, nothing's on the ground here, hopefully. And then reach back up overhead, and then we'll release that on down. Slide your hands below your shoulders, don't flop to the floor, and then press your hands down and come back up to your Cobra Pose. Again, don't lock out the arms straight, don't just hang off the shoulders. It's a rest if you need it, but don't use this as sort of like, this must be the same as this one, right? So the elbows bent, shoulders moving back is the shoulder therapeutics. Just hanging off the shoulders is sort of like a rest. All right, and then from here, turn your toes under, find a plank pose, and then a downward dog. All right, and then you could conclude with a child's pose or whatever else might feel good. Hope that was a fun one for you. It was for me.